So there is a new name emerging in the millions of pages related to the Jeffrey Epstein saga that are being released by the Department of Justice. But this is a name you probably haven't heard before. Karyna Shuliaak. Now, she's not a victim. She's not a co-conspirator. Her name surfaces instead in Epstein's final phone call from jail in an apparent secret trust signed just 2 days before he died. One that was set to give her essentially a huge portion of his fortune and his properties and a diamond ring. Who is she? What do these documents reveal about Epstein's final plans? Let's talk about it. Wide to one of the most disturbing sagas in modern criminal history. And right now, I want to talk about one woman in particular. This woman has quietly emerged, not as a victim, not as an accomplice, but as something different. According to the New York Times, she was the last known confidant of Jeffrey Epstein, the woman that he apparently called just hours before he was found dead in his jail cell. And that woman, according to the records, is Karyna Shuliaak. Now, why does that name matter? Because buried in those same files is a seemingly secret financial document signed by Epstein just 2 days before he died. And this document appears to place her at the center of his final financial plans, outlines an extraordinary bequest. More than $100 million was set to go to her. And also his private islands, his Manhattan mansion, a 33-carat diamond ring described in Epstein's own handwriting as given in contemplation of marriage? So who is Shuliaak? Well, the Times reports that Shuliaak is a Belarusian immigrant, a dentist, a woman who remained close to Epstein during his final days in custody. This is, by the way, when much of the world had turned away. She's almost invisible in the official record because everybody talks about Ghislaine Maxwell, but when you read these financial documents, she is central to his life, central to the future that Epstein appeared to be planning. And the questions now surrounding her, the mystery only deepens because also buried in those files are details that are even more unsettling. An email from Sarah Ferguson, the former Duchess of York, congratulating Jeffrey Epstein on the birth of a baby boy in 2011. A diary entry from a teenage victim who writes that she was made to feel like a human incubator for what Epstein allegedly described as his superior gene pool. This is all incredibly unsettling. We're trying to unpack as much as we can from the Epstein saga and this deep dive into what his life was about and the questions that still linger. I mean, what else don't we know about Jeffrey Epstein and the world that he left behind? So if you're just joining us, or even if you've been following this whole thing from the very beginning, just want to lay out for everyone what's going on so we're all on the same page. For years, the name Jeffrey Epstein meant a few things to the public. Financier, the registered sex offender, the guy with the island, the one with the powerful friends, but the full, ugly machinery of it all, that was locked up. It was sealed. It was hidden in vaults, redacted files. Now that changed, or at least started to change with what's been called the Epstein dump. It wasn't one big reveal. It was a slow court-ordered trickle of documents released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Millions of pages, emails, flight logs, depositions, police reports, financial records. A lot of it is exactly what you would expect. Disturbing, suggestive, grim, procedural, and it kind of lays out what this guy's life was like and who he was talking to. But in that mountain of paper, we have started to uncover threads that appear to deviate from the main story here. Threads that pointed beyond the criminal activity or the alleged criminal activity towards what he was building, who he was protecting, what he intended to leave behind. And that is where we get to Karyna Shuliaak, because she wasn't in the headlines about the victims or the trial. She wasn't Ghislaine Maxwell. Her name popped up in the financial documents, a trust, a will, the asset lists, the stuff that deals not with the past, but with the future, what Epstein planned. And one of the biggest funds that we have uncovered is a document called the 1953 Trust. It was dated August 8th, 2019. Now, Epstein signed it while he was in jail, right? This is as he was awaiting trial on federal sex crimes charges, sex trafficking. And then 2 days later, after he signed it, he's dead. And the document was basically his blueprint for what happened to his empire, valued at over $600 million at the time after he was gone. And by the way, we knew about this document. It was referenced in his will, which was publicized. It was mentioned in litigation over the years, but we really didn't know the exact content of it and what it shows us. It was kind of a secret. So this is big. And right there at the very top of the beneficiary list, Karyna Shuliaak, set to receive more money than anybody else, plus all of his iconic properties. And according to Business Insider, this document superseded an earlier trust from just January of that year, which had named apparently someone else at the top of the beneficiary list. So that document, which they say was called the Jeffrey E. Epstein 2019 Trust, it's actually no longer available on the DOJ site, by the way. We actually tried to find it, we couldn't. But Business Insider says they saw it, and so that would mean between January and August, something changed dramatically. Now, that is the document trail that led us to her, and it raised immediate questions. Who was this person who suddenly became the centerpiece of his final plans? What was their relationship? What does her prominence to these files tell us about Epstein's inner world that we don't fully understand? What did she know? So we're going to get to all of that with our guests. But first, let me just quickly run.
Epstein was making sure she was straight. He knew he was done. He signed all the documents over to her 2 days before he checked out. He said, I'm going to give you everything. Dang. I'm wondering, did she get it, though? I'm wondering, did they put a stop to it? You know, they get funny with money and stuff like that when these kind of situations happen. I'm wondering, did they say, nah, we ain't going to give you nothing. We season everything. Yeah. They already convicted him before the court date, you know, with the public. So he was already convicted with the public. But he didn't have a trial. So he was never legally convicted. So I don't know if they could seize everything. I'm wondering, did she get anything?
Through what we seem to know about Shuliaak from the public record. So the basic facts before we dive into the documents themselves. What do we know about her? Well, if you were to sketch a profile from the public reporting from outlets like the New York Times, Business Insider, The Independent, here's the picture that comes together. She's a Belarusian immigrant. She came to the United States in 2009 when she was about 20. She entered Epstein's life not long after, which is interesting, right? Because that was right after he was convicted in Florida for sex crimes. And this is, again, when a lot of his old social circle had peeled away. In fact, a source quoted by the Daily Mail claimed that her willingness to stand by him after his initial disgrace, that only strengthened their relationship. Now, she was trained as a dentist. The Independent reports Epstein actually helped pay her way through dental school at Columbia University. She was licensed in Florida and California. She was even linked to a dental office in St. Thomas that shared an address with one of Epstein's shell companies, which is interesting, by the way, because in a previous episode of Sidebar, remember we showed you an image of a dentist chair that was found in a room on Epstein's island? We couldn't really confirm what that was, but it does make you think, does this have anything to do with Shuliaak if she's a dentist? I mean, you got to wonder if there was some sort of correlation there considering her profession. But here's the thing. For much of their alleged decade-long relationship, and I don't know if it was on again, off again, or what the circumstances were, Shuliaak was actually married to another woman in Epstein's world. I'm talking about Jennifer Callan. Their wedding was in 2013, and lawyers for Epstein's victims have alleged that his network used sham same-sex marriages to help associates with immigration status and citizenship to keep it all under the radar. And Shuliaak and Callan, they divorced in 2019. Remember, this was right about the time of Epstein's arrest. Personality-wise, the descriptions, based on the reporting, they're all over the map. Some sources called her the inspector, that she was madly jealous of him, monitoring who he was talking to, his contacts. Others, like author Michael Wolff, who dined at Epstein's home, had this kind of friendship with him, recalled her as, quote, absolutely silent in company. But two facts are consistently reported, and they're crucial. First, she's widely believed to be the last person outside of the MCC, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, that Epstein ever spoke to. The Bureau of Prisons records show a 20-minute unrecorded phone call with her the evening before he was found dead, okay? Second, the documents explicitly frame their relationship as profoundly significant to him. We're not talking about rumors here. We're talking about the cold language of a legal trust, the handwritten note about the diamond ring in contemplation of marriage, the staggering scale of this bequest. So we have this figure, young, from another country, professionally established with his help, legally entangled in his world, privately described as his intended fiancée, the last known person outside the jail that he spoke with. That's the who. But to really understand the why, like why her, why then, what it meant, we got to go to the documents themselves. And that is where the story moves from biography into something else, something a lot more complex. And to do this, I want to break it down, but I want to bring on a special guest, okay? Somebody who has been tracking all of the Epstein files that have been released. Justin Shepard, host of the Just in the Nick of Crime show, the podcast. It's amazing. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time. Before I even get into this specific issue, I mean, I have been following your account for the last 5 days. You have been very specific in what you've noted from the document release. Generally speaking, what do you think some of the biggest takeaways are from this Epstein file release in the last few days?
Well, I think that it's not even that I'm trying to be pointed with it. There is just so much information coming out. There are names that, we didn't know before. You're hearing about this secret baby clinic that he wanted to do. You're now hearing, things about Bill Gates, and you're hearing things about Donald Trump, and you're hearing things about Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons. Jerry Seinfeld, like massive names that are now being brought up and brought into this, things about Vladimir Putin. So it's really all over the place. One thing that's kind of a takeaway for me, it's really insane how massive this network was, how many very well-known people are in this network, are being named or somehow in this sphere of influence, if you will.
What it says is that the world of these people in these higher up levels, it's like they all sick. They got to be sick to be a part of the clique. And it's a lot of sick shit going on.
Obviously, just being in that sphere does not equate to committing a crime. But just being in that, the amount of access that Jeffrey Epstein had to these people, and nobody really knew about it until this whole document dump started coming out. It's almost mind-boggling.
And again, let me just put the caveat. Somebody might know Epstein, somebody might have been in his orbit per se, doesn't mean that they were involved in criminal activity
Correct.
Or had knowledge of criminal activity. But obviously, being mentioned with him is so toxic. And the interesting part about this too, what's happening, and before we get into Karyna Shuliaak, the Clintons, right? The Clintons have now agreed to testify on Capitol Hill about Jeffrey Epstein. I was listening to Cuomo last night on News Nation, and he had on Vicky Ward, and he asked her, what would you want the Clintons to be asked? And she was basically, I want to know, like, what were they expecting from Epstein? Like, what did they think they were going to get? What do you think about the Clintons and what they might testify to regarding him?
So the Clintons are an interesting group of people. Bill Clinton, going back to even his time in office, even his time as governor of Arkansas, there have been rumors surrounding him with impropriety with young girls, et cetera. I'm not saying anything illegal, but just those rumors and speculation have been there for decades. At the same time, when you look at kind of everything that's gone on with Congress and the potential contempt, because I believe that they were going to vote for a contempt hearing later this week, I think possibly tomorrow, when they decided all of a sudden, okay, well, we'll go ahead and testify. I don't know what they're planning on doing, but here's what I do know. Both of them are incredible. Bill and Hillary Clinton are incredibly intelligent individuals. Both have law degrees. He's a Rhodes Scholar. She came from Yale. So whatever they're planning on doing, in my opinion, there was a method to their madness in delaying their testifying. And I'm very interested to kind of see what comes out of this.
I think we all are. So we'll see what happens there. But now I want to go on to the main focus of this episode. Karyna Shuliaak, okay? Is this somebody that you knew before? Is this somebody, her name surfacing so prominently in these financial documents? A, what does that signal to you? And B, have you heard about her before? What do you know about her?
So I'll answer the second one first, which is I had not heard about her before until this recent, document avalanche that we got. As far as everything, I mean, he's looking at leaving her a 33 karat diamond. I should have looked up what that was worth. I have no idea, but I would imagine millions and millions of dollars. The island itself, there was another $50 million in liquid assets. Plus, apparently, he was looking at a ranch and possibly a Paris property. So obviously, this person was somebody who meant a great deal to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the reason for that, I'm not exactly sure. I also find it interesting that this will was signed by him 2 days prior to his death.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
It's hard to overlook that.
Yeah, because that would seem to suggest to me that the theories out there that he was killed, I don't know if that necessarily lines up. I mean, it would make more sense if he was getting all of his affairs in order and 2 days later did something to himself versus 2 days later he was killed, or, some will say, oh, he knew he was going to be killed, right? I mean, that does become a question.
I do think it changes the public narrative a bit. It's like, either, he knew it was coming. So that means one of two things. Either he did it himself, which is, in this case, I would say the more likely outcome, or he knew somebody was coming for him. But I think that it's probably more the former than the latter.
So let's talk about this, because I think the financial documents tell a lot of the story. There was this shift, apparently, from this earlier document in January of 2019 to the 1953 trust in August, again, that he apparently signed in jail just 2 days before he died. What does that tell you, right, about Epstein's state of mind? What does it tell you about his priorities? That's what we're talking about. So I want to talk about the two fixers that are named alongside here. You have Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn. And from a legal and a practical standpoint, their central roles as executors and trustees. Do you know anything about them? Have you heard about their names before? Does it tell you anything about the structure of this?
They're another one that I had not heard before this whole, myriad of information came out. But the thing about Epstein is you can say what you want. He was obviously a very vile human being. He was a trafficker, a convicted pedophile, or convicted trafficker, predator. But he was brilliant. You can't deny that. So he surrounded himself with people who he knew would maintain his secrets, do what he wanted, and even in death, that I think still stays true. Now, to answer your question, the shift, for whatever reason, he really wanted to make sure that she was very well taken care of, and other people who were close to him were taken care of. Because I believe that we have a $288 million estate. He's got 44 benefactors. Obviously, Karyna is the one who is benefiting the most from this, or is getting the most from this. His brother was going to get $10 million. There was somebody else that was going to get $10 million.
I think Maxwell.
Now, yeah, it was Maxwell. Thank you. Was going to get $10 million. So these are all people who were very close to him, very loyal to him, that he was making sure were well taken care of. So I think that basically what this tells me is that these are the people who he's rewarding for keeping his secrets, for keeping the structure, for doing everything that needed to be done to keep his world operating.
And by the way, just to be clear, we don't know for sure why he gave the money to everybody, whether or not it was, like you said, the reward. But it does beg the question, and I'll get into this a little bit more. The government's saying right now, the Department of Justice, there's nobody else to investigate, right? There's going to be no more criminal prosecutions as of right now. When you hear about her and you hear about the money that he wanted to give her, it didn't work out, and I'll explain that away. I'll explain that too. I don't know if she's ever been interviewed. I don't know if she's ever been sat for interrogation.
Not that I've seen. Not that's been released yet, at least. By
the way, and this is also something to note as well. You put aside maybe the conspiracy theories about what happened in his death. This 20-minute unrecorded phone call that she had with him the night before he died. So maybe the last person that ever spoke to him. What do you make of that?
I would say that somebody who had intimate knowledge of him, who was in an intimate relationship, who had that final or one of the last phone calls he ever had, to not sit down and interview them, to find out what they know, it seems a little suspicious to me. It makes you question, why wouldn't you do this? At the end of the day, yes, people want names, people want to know who's implicated in this, but at the center of this, there are a bunch of victims, a bunch of survivors who deserve answers as well. And if for nothing else, this is supposed to be the Department of Justice. The only way they're going to get justice is to have answers. And this woman could have a lot of those answers. So I'm with you. Why not sit her down and at least see what she has to say, do a recorded interview?
And by the way, I know they're still going through the documents. I don't know if there's something to suggest maybe there was some sort of interview with her or some sort of conversation. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe stand corrected. I don't know. But I do want to go through what we seem to know from these financial documents that put Shuliaak at the center of the story. So you have this foundational document. It's the Jeffrey Epstein's last will and testament, and I think that funnels the money into the trust. But what I really want to get to is the 1953 trust. So it's the one that names Shuliaak. And you have this particular section, and it reads, to Karyna Shuliaak, if she survives me, $50 million. In addition, the trustees are directed to purchase an annuity for the benefit of Karyna Shuliaak in the amount of $50 million. So that is the headline, $100 million dedicated to her. And then you have this next section, 2.3b, really breathtaking. It lists the specific properties for her. All of my interests, Zorro Ranch, New Mexico, the island known as Little St. James, the island known as Great St. James, 22 Avenue Foch, Paris, 358 El Brillo Way, Palm Beach, 9 East 71st Street, New York. You know, Justin, these are iconic properties, the islands, the townhouse, the ranch. This has all been under a part of an investigation. Leaving it to her, thoughts?
I mean, it's a lot for somebody in their 30s. I mean, you're talking about millions, tens of $1 million of property, maybe more potentially. But I mean, it's a lot. And you have to question, why is everything going to this one person? Why are you not liquidating it? Why are you not having the state to do that? What is the method behind this, or the motive behind giving this woman all of this? There has to be a reason, and I don't even want to speculate what that reason is, because I have no clue. I don't know what's going through the mind of a madman, especially 2 days prior to his death. But it's very interesting, and I think it's one that definitely deserves a question that deserves a little bit more in-depth conversation and research. Conversation with her, perhaps.
Yeah, and apparently there was another section that created a separate multi-million-dollar fund just for her. You wonder if that's to cover maybe operating costs for these states, like taxes, staff, upkeep. But then you go to pages 12 and 13, okay? And there are what seem to be handwritten notes in the margin. So next to the description of that 33-carat diamond ring, the handwritten note says, I had given to Karyna Shuliaak in contemplation of marriage in the event the marriage is not consummated. Interesting. Justin, it seemed like he was going to be long-term with her.
It does seem that way. And maybe that's part of it. At this point, I haven't seen, do we have any idea how long he was with her? How long they had been in a relationship?
So I mentioned before that she was in his orbit from like 2009. He'd been, I don't know like when they started, if they were on again, off again, but they were basically together for a little bit, seemingly. And she had known him for quite a bit. So it does raise again a question about, what did she have access to? Because there's been so much talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, right? So much talk about her being his number two, his associate, his girlfriend. And there's not a lot of talk about Shuliaak. And I'm not saying, by the way, that she has any knowledge or was part of anything that Maxwell or Epstein were up to. But again, this kind of money transfers are interesting.
No, I would agree with you. And, again, everything at this point is speculation. And it's very strange, because things that you would once have said to anybody else, oh, this is just an absolutely wild conspiracy theory. Some of those things are coming out in these documents as apparently truth, and perceived truth, I should say. And so it's kind of hard to even guess what's reality and what's not with some of this, but you almost wonder, I'm trying to do the math. I know she's in her 30s now. If you go back to 2009, she was probably in her late teens, early 20s when they met. And, I almost wonder, was she being groomed to take over this empire for him?
You make a really good point. And by the way, I should tell everybody, all of this money, all of these properties that the Epstein wanted it to go to, including her, didn't work out that way. The money, the properties didn't go. The estate went into a trust, which was used to pay out all the victims, the legal fees, the expenses. The New York Post reporting that now it's just under $130 million that's left. It's all tied up in the U.S. Virgin Island probate courts. I mean, do you know the status of that, Justin?
I mean, probate goes slow. And that's what I heard too, about 127 million still tied up. And that I would imagine it's going to be for a long time as you continue to process through this, as victims come forward and try to, stake their claims, to be compensated for the abuse that they went through. I think that, the odds of her receiving anything, it will be years before she does, if she does at all.
I want to look at a different kind of document now. So these are apparently the emails from Shuliaak to Epstein, herself. We have two I want to read. The first is from May of 2012, and it reads, I love you very much. You will always have me, no matter what, as long as it makes you happy. The second, from June of 2013, says, you have absolutely ruined me today. Each minute I am struggling to not cry. Justin, sometimes very tough to make sense of what these emails could mean, particularly, I mean, you've been going through how many communications and messages. Look at the thing with Peter Attia. I mean, my gosh, you can go back and forth with that. Anything you take away from these kinds of emails? And by the way, so much of this is documented. He had so many communications through emails, shared so much through email communication.
So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot through email. And to me, and I want to say to that point for a moment, it's insane to me how many very, very wealthy, powerful people just communicated so nonchalantly with him with some pretty incriminating, verbiage. Like they never thought it would. I mean, I guess I'm sure they never thought it would be seen. But, in my mind, and I know, you're an attorney. In my mind, I always think, well, if I'm going to send this email and it's going to be seen 5 years from now, am I comfortable with what it says? And it's like none of these people who are supposed to be these brilliant, highly intelligent world leaders, businessmen, et cetera, they're all just, emailing these things. And it's just, that kind of blows my mind. Now, to answer your other question, I think, and this is my opinion, I think that what you have is a situation of a young woman he met when she's like 20 years old. He's probably in his 50s or 60s at this point. Again, I'm not doing the math in my head, but, I feel that this is a grooming situation. So, you go back to what we saw last year with, the Diddy trial. We'll use this as an example. You saw these women who had great days with him. You would see the emails and the messages when they had great days with him, and you'd see the emails and the messages when they had bad days with him. At the end of the day, Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted predator. We know what he did. There's no question about that. And so I would imagine you have a young woman here trying to make sense of this much older man, this relationship that they're in, that he's kind of pulling the strings on everything, and she's struggling with it. We see that oftentimes in cases like this when you have people with a lot of power and then a, much younger dynamic.
We also have this diary entry I got to mention as well. Now, I don't know who this is from, but this is kind of making a lot of headlines too. And as we're just talking about the writings, we're talking about communication. And the handwriting is kind of difficult to decipher, but this person writes about feeling like a, quote, human incubator, claims that Epstein talked about creating a superior gene pool. She mentions the pressure to play piano, as well as the reason that she was chosen. You've seen stuff about that, Justin, right? This idea, was there a secret child or something?
Yeah, there's supposedly, and I believe, don't hold me to this, I believe I saw this morning right before I came on to speak with you, something that where Sarah Ferguson had, congratulated him.
So 2011 email from Sarah Ferguson, casual congratulatory note. Don't know if you're still on this BBM, but heard from the Duke that you have had a baby boy. Even though you never kept in touch, I still am here with love, friendship, and congratulations on your baby boy, Sarah XX.
So, you look at that and you look at the funding that he was trying to do, allegedly trying to get into, as far as my wife and I were actually talking about this, because at this point, nothing's off the table. It's like, why would you want to have this secret facility? And I'm like, well, if you're into trafficking children and you can grow your own children that have no record, that's kind of, and I coupled that with another email. I don't know if you saw this one between him and a physician, where this physician I believe well-known, renowned neurologist, I forget his name off the top of my head, gives him a casual hint, and this is going to be disturbing, so I'm sorry. I mean, at least when you look at it in the context. And this physician, this doctor, is saying how babies, newborns, will suck harder on their pacifiers at the sound of their mother's voice. And it's just, that comment alone isn't disturbing, but when you look at it in the context of who it's being sent to, I don't think your mind can help but go to where your mind goes. And so you have all of this stuff where he's now putting himself with babies, like you said, the human incubator thing, with this potential secret facility that he's wanting to fund. There's just a lot of very, again, strange things that a month ago would have been outlandish conspiracies that are now we're seeing in writing and documents being dropped by the Department of Justice.
And him with this fascination with Putin and Russia, and videos of his mouth, and a video of him chasing around what appear to be young girls, and a video and a picture of Andrew on top of what appears to be a young girl. It's very hard to make sense of it all and try to have a connective tissue. But given what we know about Epstein and given what we know about Ghislaine Maxwell, a lot of this just appears to be so dark, so sinister, so disturbing on multiple levels. I'll give you the final word, Justin. What else are you going to be looking out for as you continue to go through these documents? And is there anything that you've seen so far that would indicate to you, maybe we talked about maybe having further questions, but is there anything that you see that could potentially justify a prosecution of anybody?
I think it depends. I think with what we've seen now, a prosecution, not necessarily, but an investigation, absolutely. I feel at this point, like you said, we're seeing some very, very dark things coming out of this, things that most people couldn't even comprehend exist until you really look at these. And in my opinion, no matter who the person is, if you were in this man's orbit, a thorough investigation needs to be brought upon you. That's just it. It needs to be looked into. There are real victims. There are child victims. For a nation who we claim that we want to protect children. Here's your opportunity. Here's some very rich and powerful people, surrounding themselves, or one of the most notorious pedophiles surrounding themselves with some of the richest, most powerful people in the world. This all needs to be scrutinized. Now, again, like you said earlier, like I said, just because you were in his orbit doesn't mean that you committed any illegal activities or knew that illegal activities were happening, but it at least deserves an investigation.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Justin Shepard, Just in the Nick of Crime. Let everybody know where they can find you. Watch your stuff because you are fantastic. And again, I've been following your social media for the last week, just trying to.
Yeah. Epstein shit was crazy. A lot of powerful people was with that bullshit. And now they acting like they ain't know nothing. Yeah. A lot of powerful people was with the bullshit. They acting like they don't know nothing. It just lets you know, like, these people can't be trusted. And these are the people that the world put their trust in. You think because the people got money and they, have people doing what they say and people look up to them as if they don't do no wrong and people supposed to follow them. But a lot of these people, they got foul ways. And from what we see, it's like a cult. You get into the program when you follow the program and you get more money. Everybody chasing to be more wealthy, paid. So they willing to go with whatever the program is to get more money. And we see what the program is. It's like a pattern of it though. It's a pattern of people being sick. And it's like majority of the people, they messing with underage kids or they doing fruitcake shit. So it's like, when you look at the world, the people that are in position that got the money, they all on some weird shit. Don't nobody want to just live and be regular, as I say. They all got to do some like sick shit. And if they do the sick shit, they be able to make money and be in sync with what everything's going on. If they don't, then they get blackballed. So in a way, it seemed like, I'm not saying that they forced, but if you want to make money, you got to go with the program to get paid. And everybody chasing money, and they like making exceptions to do the shit. So it's like, it's crazy. Yeah, I don't want that. Yeah, I don't want that. Just let me live. And then they get him to do certain things so that they can hold it against him. So now they holding it against him and they making him do what they want to do. All right, well, we know about this. They encourage him to do things that they can hold against him later. So it's like they all controlling each other. And like they just said, how is all these people, these high-powered people named in it, but none of them saying nothing? None of them. All these high-powered people is in there, but nobody saying nothing. It's like he handpicked the people that ain't saying nothing. But within other situations, people be ready to tell the business. Elaine Maxwell, she went all the way without saying nothing. Without saying nothing. Like, man, listen, I'm going all the way to trial. And went all the way. All these people that been named, they ain't saying nothing. Don't nobody want to put themselves in that fire. Nobody. It is like kind of weird that, 2 days after he signed what he signed, he checked out. But then I look at it like this, right? If he was in the custody of the government and he got all this information on all these high up people, why would they lock him up then? And then somebody get into the inside and take his life? I would think that they would just let him be free. Like, let him continue to do what he doing. Because if they locked him up to take his life, they could have just took his life on the street. They ain't had to lock him up to take his life. So it's like, that right there has me questioning that. Like, why would they lock him up to take his life when they could have did that without locking him up? So with that there, it just make me look at it like, maybe he did take his own life. Yeah. Because they could have took his life on the street. Like, all right, we don't want you to, reveal anything. We don't want you to say nothing about us. We're going to take your life now. But for him to be in the custody of the government and, these powerful people, they saying that they alleged might have had something done to him. I don't see it, but it's a possibility, but I just don't see it.